We are looking at how to graph a line given an equation in slope-intercept form. So I'm taking a look at this worksheet. You all have access to the PDF in Google Classroom. Let's get started. So we've got an equation given to us, y equals negative 3x minus 2. So let's first identify our slope and our y-intercept. Let's remind ourselves of slope-intercept form. We have y equals mx plus b. And remember, m, the coefficient of x, is always our slope. And b is the constant number, and that is always our y-intercept. So in this first equation, my y-intercept is my constant number. That's this negative 2. And then my slope is this number right before the x. It's negative 3. So what I do now when I want to graph my equation, I start by plotting my y-intercept. So my b was negative 2. That means that my y-intercept is going to be on the y-axis at negative 2. And I want you to draw a point right there. Now we know that my slope is negative 3. So slope always represents a rate. This is a change. That triangle stands for change in y over the change in x. Remember, a rate is just two numbers being compared to one another. So we're comparing the change in y divided by the change in x. Another way to think about this is the change in y is our rise, and the change in x is our run. I want you also to remember Mr. Slope Guy, who has a positive I and a negative I that represents our positive slopes, and then negative slope. And he's got a vertical line for a nose, which is an undefined slope, and then a horizontal mouth, which represents our zero slope. So I have my y-intercept here at negative 2. Now I need to use my slope to draw the shape of the line. So the slope is negative 3. That tells me that it's going to go down from left to right. And I want you to think about slope as a fraction. So I'm going to convert negative 3. Well, that's the same thing as negative 3 over 1. I'm just rewriting this number as a fraction so it's easier to see what's my rise and what's my run. So from my y-intercept, I go and I count down 3. So that's 1, 2, 3. And then my run is 1. So that means I go over 1. And then all I got to do is connect my points together and draw some arrows. And there's my line. I converted this equation into a graph. Let's look at the next example. So my first step is still to figure out my slope and my y-intercept. Remember, the slope is the number right before the x, the coefficient of x. So in this example here, it's going to be negative 1 over 2. And then my y-intercept is the constant term. It's just the number. So it's going to be negative 5. We always include the sign right before the number. Now I'm ready to graph my line. I start by plotting my y-intercept at negative 5. So I go down to negative 5 on the y-axis, and then my slope is negative 1/2. If it's a negative slope, I know that it's going to be going down from left to right. So my numerator is my rise, and my denominator is my run. So my rise is 1, and my run is 2. And what I want you to think about when you have a negative number, I want you to include that negative number here in the rise. So that's a negative number is going to tell you to go down, whereas a positive number will have you go up. And always run to the right. So in this example, I start out at, again, -5, and then my rise is -1, so I go down 1, and then I run to the right over 2. From here, I just need to connect my points together and add arrowheads, and I get my line. Let's look at number 3. I have y equals 9x minus 4. My first step is still to determine my slope and my y-intercept first. So in this example, my slope is still the number right before the x, the coefficient of x, it's 9. And let's write that as a fraction so I can clearly see my rise and my run. The 9 written as a fraction is 9 over 1. And again, that's my rise over my run. This time we have a positive slope. So my graph is going to be increasing from left to right. Then my y-intercept is this constant term, -4. So I'm ready to start my graph. I go to -4 on the y-axis, that's down here. And then I need to count up 9 and over 1. Remember, when I have a positive slope, I count up and then always run to the right. So going up 9 gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then to the right 1 is right here. And then all that's left is I need to connect my 2 points together and I have my line. One more example. My first step is to determine my slope and my y-intercept. My slope is the coefficient of x, the number right before x. So in this example, my slope is 1/2. And then my y-intercept is my constant term. And in this example, I don't see a constant term there. But just because I don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. When I can't see a constant term, that means that my y-intercept is 0. So b is 0. So that's our first step, is to graph the y-intercept. So I find 0 on my y-axis. That's right at the origin. And now my slope was already in a fraction. And remember, the numerator tells me my rise and denominator tells me my run. So since my rise was positive, I go up 1 and then I always run to the right. So I go over 2. And those are my 2 points. You can connect them together, add the arrowheads, and I get my answer. I'd like you to give this a try both in Khan Academy and on paper. Do your best. Let me know if you have questions. I'm here to help. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.